Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing my August wrap up. So August, in terms of books, we'll just dive straight in. I had a really good reading month. I read 12 books and my big challenge for my TBR in August was to read 5,000 pages, and it was like, can I read 5,000 pages because I recently hit 5,000 subscribers and I thought it would be like a good way to sort of commemorate that. And I can say that I did read, and I surpassed 5,000 pages. I read 5,140 pages in completed books, and I also started a few bits which I have since been finished or continued reading into September. But in completed books, I read 5,140, and I didn't have any pages that I was carrying over from July, so that is literally in the month of August. So I'm really happy with that. So proud of myself that I managed to achieve that goal. I didn't think it was possible, and it was not looking possible in the middle of the month, but I did it. Of these, I read 1 non-fiction, 1 romance, 1 horror, 2 historical mysteries, 3 fantasy, and 4 fantasy romance. So a wide range there, a very wide range. All 12 of the books were adult. And then in terms of my ratings, it was pretty just steady. It was a steady reading month. I had 1 3-star, 8 4-stars, and 3 4.5 stars. So no new favourites, but there were some good quality ones in there. And then in terms of series, I started 1 and finished it. I continued in 3 series with 4 books being continuations. 2 of my books were rereads, so first books in series to rereading the first book in a series to then continue it, which I believe puts me on the go at 29 still. I haven't checked that, but I believe that is at 29. So quite a big chunky amount of books for me to talk through and things to be getting into. In terms of life in August, August was really a month of 2 halves, distinctly 2 halves. So the first half of the month, I did a lot of things. I met up with Sophia and Patrick. Patrick was visiting the UK, so it was so lovely meeting him and his wife, and we went for a Sunday roast here in London, and then went to Daunt Books, and Patrick has vlogged all of his experience and has put up the episode of him shopping around London. So that was absolutely lovely. I did a little trip to Virginia Water and did a walk around the lake there one weekend. I went to see Taylor Swift. So I did manage to get tickets for that. I mean, a while ago, quite a few months ago, I think last year, I got the tickets for Taylor Swift. I saw her with my partner, which was a lot of fun, a lot of fun seeing her. And on concerts, I managed to get Oasis tickets for next year. I feel like that was a whole thing. I don't know if the whole drama of Oasis tickets really got out of the UK, because I know it's just UK shows that they announced, but it seemed to be a drama here to get Oasis tickets, and I just got them quite easily. But I got Oasis tickets. So that's my first half of the month. And then the second half of the month, or more from the 22nd, I had some I had some planned but sort of impromptu surgery. So from that point on, I just spent the whole month in bed. Bed, sofa, bed, sofa, bed, sofa. I read a lot of books, and that is the only reason that I managed to hit 5,000 pages, is because in that week I read, 8 books or something, that I was not going to hit it at all until I got to this point. I am now just over 2 weeks into recovery, doing well, a lot better, but tiring quite quickly and easily, so not quite at my peak. I don't know how I'm going to take a thumbnail, because I don't think I can lift up that many books all at once, but I'm doing well. It was something that it was planned. It happened a lot quicker than I anticipated. That from that consultation, they pretty much we can get you in next week, and I was like, okay. I didn't realise this was going to be happening now. I thought it might happen in a month or 2 months, but okay, in a week, right. So in some ways that's good, because it gave me less time to worry about it, but I am doing quite well now. Just been needing a lot of rest. And I'm a little bit nervous to starting back at work tomorrow. So we will get into everything that I read, because I did read a lot. And if you look at the dates that I read things, I read everything pretty much from the 22nd to the 31st. That is when I did all of my reading for the month. So picking a little bit at random. So as I mentioned, I had two rereads of series that I had previously started. So in my attempt to finish them and continue on with them. So the first of these being The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne, the first book in the Bloodsworn saga. So I love John Gwynne. He's one of my favourite authors, and I've actually managed to get tickets to his London event, which is coming up in October. So excited to meet him and see him like in person. But I reread Shadow of the Gods and I did it via audiobook, and I started this actually took me quite a while to read. Like, I started it pretty early in the month and I didn't finish it until towards the end of the month. This is like a Nordic fantasy story. You follow three main characters: Orca, who is a mother figure, and she gets thrust off onto this quest at the beginning of the book, and then we have Varg, who is an ex-slave who is fleeing his old owner and entering into this warband, and then Elvar, who is also part of a differing warband, and the sort of journey that they're going on. I love John Gwynne, I love his books, and obviously I really enjoy his writing style. I did struggle with the audiobook for this. I did struggle with it, and I picked listening to it on audio because I was like, I know the story, I've read it before, but my concentration on that audiobook was not good. So I really recommend this story. Like, my rating of this from when I read it physically was 4.5 stars. And I've kept it at that because I know that I really like the story, but the audiobook and me did not click. Like, I think I really liked the guy's voice. Like, I think his voice was really good, but my concentration just did not click with it. That I struggled. I don't know if the volume was a little bit low. Like, I had the volume cranked all the way up, and sometimes I was still, it sounded a bit like he was mumbling maybe, especially with some of the names. I struggled at differentiating people, even though I knew them because I'd already read the story, and like some of the action just didn't seem as though it flowed in the same way that it flowed in the book. That I was like, oh, we're just coming up to things. Like, I was like, I remember this happening in the book, I remember this scene, but it was clearer to me when I read it physically than when I listened to it. So it wasn't the best experience. It wasn't the best experience. I put that down to the audiobook because I had a great time reading it physically, and I wanted to read the second book on audiobook in September, but now I'm a bit conflicted on whether I do that or not. Despite enjoying the guy's voice, like, I think he had a nice voice, I just struggled to concentrate on the audio. I don't know what I'm going to do for my reread of the Hunger of the Gods, whether I keep with him, because I do know the story, and so it isn't impacting me as much as if this was the first time read. But I would definitely recommend this. I do have like a guide to John Gwynne. I do think my favourite series of his is still The Faithful and the Fallen, but if you want a bit more detail on him and his works, then I do have that, and I'm really looking forward to the series concluding later this year. And then I also reread The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake. This is the one that I actually finished when I was in hospital, so I literally had the tiniest bit left, and I really thought I was going to finish it before my operation, but they were so speedy with getting me in. I was told, you're going to spend, you're going to have a lot of time, waiting around, like, take a book with you. And I got there and they was like, right, we're getting you in. It's your first of the day, you're first in, off you go. And I was like, but I thought I was going to have like time to read my book, but okay. So I did finish this in the night when I couldn't sleep. This is a dark academia story. We follow a cast of 6 characters as they enter the Alexandrian Society, and they all have a different magical power, so some of them are more elemental, some of them are more mental, and they are all training in their magic. And they know that 6 of them have entered this society in this first year, but only 5 of them can continue on into the second year, and it's following them through that year and exploring who is not going to make it into that second year. So I really enjoyed this as a reread. I like the writing style. I think it is quite, unique. It is quite slow as a story. It's not the speediest, but I think it was good for me to reread this to get settled back into this, and I am looking forward to reading the second one in September, hopefully. Okay, so those are the rereads. Okay, a couple of continuations. So towards the beginning of the month, I read Gold by Raven Kennedy. This is the 5th book in the Fate Prisoner series, which is a fantasy romance series that the original concept is based on King Midas, and that everything he touches can turn to gold, and we're following a main character, Oren, who is part of his harem, that she is kept in a sort of cage in his palace, but she feels comfortable and safe there because of some of the traumas that she's gone through in her early years. And so she's like, I'm really happy in this place, being sort of put in this cage. But then King Midas, he wants to expand. He doesn't want just his kingdom, he wants more, and so he goes out exploring to get more. And then we follow Oren as she is journeying out into the world to get to some of the new kingdoms that this king has conquered, and that's pretty much the start of it, and it goes a long way from there. This book is in a very different place to that start. That start is pretty much just like this is the beginning, and then it's gonna blow open. This one I liked it more than Glow, which is the fourth one. I actually really liked a lot of the side characters that we got in this. That the main characters, I was a bit like, oh, come on. And actually it was some of the side characters that I was more interested in their perspectives. So I think they were definitely a good entry, a good thing to have in this series. I was like, I'm rooting for this like side character thing that's going on. So I think they actually like increased my pace with this. Definitely some good like twists and turns throughout it. It had a good pace, typically, I'd say. I still think my favourite in the series is Gleam, which is the third one. That these aren't my favourite books, but I do think they're fun. I think they're a fun fantasy romance, and she has managed to keep me intrigued throughout the whole thing. So interested to see how it all concludes, because the final book comes out this month now in September. Although I think that is in hardback and I have them all in paperback, so I might have to wait until maybe I'm guessing like early next year when it comes out in paperback. And then sticking with fantasy romance continuations, although on a very different vein, I read the fourth volume of Lore Olympus by Rachel Smith. So this is a Hades and Persephone retelling in a graphic novel webtoon format, and so we follow Hades and Persephone and their budding romance, but also some of the other gods. It does have some like more graphic themes in it, and some of the gods aren't all portrayed in the nicest of lights, but the romance between Hades and Persephone is very cute. So I definitely really like the art style in this. I love the colour schemes that are used, so it's all very pink and blue and sort of purpley, which I really like. I've just liked those colours. I just really like those colours. So it's really pretty, really nice colours. So yeah, this was a lot of fun just to breeze through. I think I read this in the early days of my recovery. It might have been like day 2 or day 3, and I was like, I need something just really. I read a lot of like 300-page books in that time. I was like, I need quick, fun, just do not require a lot of brain power books. And so that's when I picked this up. This was a little bit heavy. I was really tactical. I was like, I want paperbacks, I want 300 pages, I want light, I want to speed through these. And this didn't meet the lightness in terms of book, but I read it so quickly that it was fine. So yes, definitely enjoyed that and looking forward to continue on with that series. I'll do my pile of like standalone, all of these read in that week that I was recovering or really bad. So I read Two Wrongs Make a Right by Chloe Leese. This is a fun romance. It wasn't my favourite. But it was fine. It was just fine. So we're following two characters, Jamie and B, and they're very different. So B is covered in like tattoos. She's a bit sort of sporadic, all over the place, whereas Jamie is very put together. He's a doctor, he's all very put together, he seems like he has his life all in order, and so it seems as though they're aesthetically very, very different. And in terms of their life choices as well, that B's an artist, that they're very different, but actually they have a lot of similarities in common. So their relationship was quite cute. Their friends set them up and they're like, why are they doing this? This is just so annoying. Like, stop trying to put us together. We're obviously not clicking. Like, we're so opposite. But then they're like, okay, fine. To get our own back, we're going to fake date and then blow it all up and sort of show them that we obviously are not matched. So they start doing this like fake dating thing, and all their friends are really happy about it. And eventually they're like, actually, maybe their friends were right and we actually do have a lot in common. We're enjoying each other's company. Like, yeah, okay. We were wrong. So it was quite cute, but it wasn't my favourite, but I did find it quite cute. Then I read A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. This is one of her horror novels. I hadn't read any of her horror novels prior to this. I just read some of her fantasy ones. So it was good to like experience her in another genre. And I really liked this. And I do think it's a really pretty book. Like, it's got a nice key. I liked the size of it. It was very like, it's a cute hardback. It's a really cute size. But we follow the main character, Samantha, and she's not an archaeologist, but she like studies bugs in archaeological sites, and the site that she's on has had to pause, and so she's gone back to her family home. And when she gets there, she's like, everything is just really odd. Like, it's not the vibe that I left this in. Why is my mum seemingly like redecorating it in the style that it was when my grandma was here? It's not us at all. Everything just seems a bit odd. There's these vultures circling. Things are a little bit creepy. The house seems to be listening to us, and the longer she stays there, the creepier and creepier it gets. So I quite like this. I didn't find it like overly scary at all. It was just an intriguing mystery really into what is going on in this house. Like, why is it haunted? So I did quite enjoy it. I liked our main character. Yeah, she had a lot of personality. She was quite bubbly. She was very like confident in herself, and was sort of like, this is me, take it or leave it. I am who I am. Don't like change me. I know where I'm going. I know what I want. Like, I enjoyed reading from her perspective. So yeah, this was a solid one. I do think my favourite is still Thornhedge, but it was a good read. And then on a similar like cover, I'd say, I read The Last Tale of the Flower Bride. I mean, obviously different sizes, but I think the aesthetic of them is very similar. So this, I don't know what genre to class this as. It's not fantasy, but I put it as fantasy, but it's not really fantasy. And this was quite different to my like expectations of it. So going in, I knew that it was about this man who marries this woman, and it's don't look into my past, don't look into me, don't question my past, just enjoy me as I am in my current state. Can you live with that? Can you love me just for who I am in the present without looking into my past? But then Indigo, the wife, finds out that her aunt is dying, and so they go back to her childhood home together, which prompts the bridegroom to have a lot of questions, and sort of starts digging a little bit more as he becomes intrigued into who is the person that he has actually married. So it's quite gothic, it's quite romantic, it's quite dark. What I hadn't realised based on that synopsis, that it is actually set in our like real world. I for some reason had put it in like a fantasy world, that it wasn't, you know, a modern day real world, and that these characters were living in, you know, the 21st century. So that was I guess a surprise for me. I did enjoy it. I did like our characters. I found them interesting to read from. I think the atmosphere in this was done really well. That I liked the writing. I liked the floweriness of the writing. That it was really flowery, and it was quite poetic at times. I wouldn't say I ever was fully attached to the story. That I was never like so infatuated by it, but I do think it was really well written. I do think it explored the topics in a really interesting way. It was just a little bit different to what I was anticipating going in, but I liked the vibes. It's very much a vibes, atmospheric story, so if you like those, then I think you would enjoy this. But it's not quite what I anticipated it was going to be. And then we have a couple more piles. So I continued in the Veronica Speedwell series. So I read books 5 and 6 in this series by Deanna Raybourn. So book 5 I'd read prior to the operation. This one I read in that week. So these are fun historical mysteries with a romantic subplot. And I've been really enjoying the series. I mean, you can tell I'm on book 6. I only have a couple more to go until I'm up to date. So each of these is sort of like a standalone mystery within this world. We're following our main character Veronica, who is a lepidoporus or a butterfly collector, and the investigations that she goes through with our other main character Stoker, and their sort of antagonistic relationship that they have, that has been building throughout all of the books. So in the 5th one, it sort of goes back a little bit and sort of relates back to some of the characters that we met in the 1st book. So it doesn't feel quite so standalone, this one, because of how much it's relating to some of the things that we found out in book 1 in terms of Veronica's like heritage and her parents. So it is related to that, and it also had like mentions, although not as a main character, Jack the Ripper and those serial killings that went on. So I enjoyed this one. I think it is fun when you can sort of see sort of like the plots all sort of weaving together. And then the sixth one was a little bit more of that standalone mystery, less of like a building of the plot. And in this one, we're investigating the death of one of the female climbers or mountain climbers at the time. The person in here wasn't real, but supposedly in the late 1800s there were females that were starting to climb mountains, and I do enjoy that in these, that they do like mix in real world events and real world things. So it's just investigating this person's death or murder in a remote European country that does not really exist. So I enjoyed both of these. They're a really fun time, sort of like solid 4 stars, but definitely enjoyed both of these. Before I forget, I do have one book that I do not own physically, which is why I almost forgot it. At the very beginning of the month, I listened to The Devil in the White City by Eric Larson, which is a non-fiction centered around the Great Columbian show in Chicago during the, I'm guessing it was 1800s, and it follows the building of that show or the World Exhibition at that time, the pressure of them to create something that matched the Paris one, which was just before, to the architecture of it, how they could bring it all together, how that they could build this big show, get the attendance and be able to recuperate all of the money that they're putting into it, all the struggles that they went through building this show, in terms of the workforce, in terms of the living conditions, in terms of the like making sure that these were buildings that were going to last, that it was going to have technological developments beyond what Paris and that exhibition created, and alongside that all of the murders that were happening at the time in Chicago, and focusing on a specific serial killer. I prompted because of the Jack the Ripper in A Murderous Relation. I was like, oh yes. I mean, obviously it wasn't Jack the Ripper, but I think this murderer was inspired by Jack the Ripper. It was very much a story of two halves, with the look at the like architecture and the building of the show, and then the murders. And the murders were obviously a lot more like dramatic compared to the show, which was definitely a more dry telling. So it was an interesting juxtaposition between the two halves of the story, but I think it was done well, and I liked the way that it was told in terms of it not feeling too dry for a non-fiction, that it was quite an engaging read. So I definitely recommend it, and I definitely found it interesting, especially as someone that like visited Chicago on holiday earlier this year, and sort of seeing, I was like, oh yeah, that's where that was. Okay, yes. And seeing how much of the things that we still use today came out of that show. Like the Ferris wheel was invented there. So many different inventions were created there at that time. Okay, so now moving into the final 2 books. So these are part of the same series. So I read The Inadequate Heir and The Endless War. So the 3rd and 4th book in the British Kingdom series, but I sort of counted them as books 1 and 2 in their own series. So The British Kingdom by Daniela Jensen is a series of duologies. So I'd read the first duology a few years ago. Now I've read the second duology, and then she is writing a 3rd duology within this world. So they're all following different characters. Well, there's a lot of crossover with the characters that we did meet these ones in that first one, but it's centered around separate couples through each duology, which is why I've sort of kept them as like their own thing. So I sort of read that first one, counted it as finished. Now I've read this one, counting it as like started and finished within this month, and then I'll do the same when I get to books 5 and 6. I really enjoyed these. These were like my favourite books that I've read in the month, that I thoroughly enjoyed these. This one I read at the beginning, this one I read at the end. Like, our main characters are Zara and Keris, so they are on opposing sides in a war. Zara is the general of one kingdom, and Keris on the other side, and they've been at war, in this endless war, for many generations. And the current rulers, because Keris is a prince, have been so opposing, and they've been so against each other, and they've been fighting ongoing for many years. And then at the beginning of the book, these 2 people cross, coincidentally not realizing who the other is, and they start having this relationship, and they're like, we don't trust you because each other because we know that we're on opposing sides, but we can also see your point of view. And so they start building this trust together. Then things go from there. Is how can we work towards peace for our peoples when we've been at war for so long and our governments are so against each other. So I really enjoy this. I liked the build in the relationship. I loved the fantasy plots in both of these. I think Daniela Jensen does a really good job at having such an engrossing fantasy plot alongside the romance. The romance doesn't take over. Like, I think the balance in these is done well. I think these are my favourite series by her, that I really like the world in this, that we've got these different kingdoms, we've got this bridge kingdom that goes between parts of the world. I really like the characters, it feels so fleshed out. I enjoy these more than A Fate Inked in Blood, which I read earlier this year. That I prefer, I'd say, the relationships in these and in the first duology as well. I did realise whilst reading, especially the first book, that we've seen some of these scenes before in the second Bridge Kingdom book, but obviously this is told from differing perspectives. So actually I think in this instance it really worked to my advantage that it had been a good few years since I'd read books 1 and 2, because I think I read 1 and 2 back to back. Then I waited until 3 and 4 were both published in paperback before reading these, and those few years and the fogginess in my memory really worked to my advantage, because I think if you had gone straight from 2 to 3, you would feel as though you were rereading scenes that you had read in book 2, and that actually me coming in having had such a gap, I was like, I know I think I've seen this before, but I can't remember it. So it worked really well having that big time gap. So very happy I read these, thoroughly enjoyed them, would strongly recommend the Bridge Kingdom series, especially if you enjoy fantasy romance. Highlight of the month, really well written, really like engaging stories. That is everything that I finished in the month of August. I read a lot, which is why this video is a little bit long. But yeah, it was a really great reading month. Very impressed myself for getting to over 5,000 pages. And it is even more than that. I did finish a book on the 1st of September, but that's for my September wrap up. So yeah, a really solid reading month, thanks to spending a lot of time between the bed and the sofa. But that is everything from me. Let me know what your favourite book of August was, and if you've read any of the books that I have read, and how your reading has been going in the month of September, because I know we're already a little chunk of the way in by now, but I haven't been ready to film until today. I have not been ready, and I feel already like I am quite tired and I need to spend the rest of the day being a potato. So thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!